One of the a major initiative of the Adelaide Rotary Club was that there was a thing called the Science and Engineering Challenge. The whole idea was to what would you say, knit their school studies and things in the science subjects with the real world. It was quite well known to the people up in Newcastle if you can get the Rotary clubs on board, and they'd started this association. And even here in South Australia, we run it on about 10 days, about 6 or 7 in the Adelaide area, and then in 3 or 4 country locations after. And there's Rotary clubs in all of those places or not too far from. The 3 universities are fully behind it, and they supply undergraduates and graduates to come along and work as volunteers as well. And that's particularly valuable, we think, because it shows these youngsters in years. It's for years 9 and 10, I should have mentioned, so that when they do 11 and 12, they continue to study the STEM subjects. And they can mix with these graduates and undergraduates from the universities, and they can learn firsthand just how, well, what careers there are and what's the ups and the downs of being at university courses doing the STEM subjects. One of the major jobs for myself in being in charge was to get out and seek sponsors all over the place from people who would have an obvious interest in having students come through to uni courses and come out and be employees. It turned out that we were raising of the order of, just for the Challenger, not for the Rotary Club, which raises a lot of money on its own, but we were raising something like 70 or 80 grand a year, which was the biggest single amount of money raised by the club, I think, in my time at any rate. And one of them that always sticks in my mind is a retirement village out near the Tea Tree Plaza shopping centre, and they put in 1,000 every year, and they're big believers, and we make a point of going out and talking to them after the challenge year's over and thanking them profusely and everything. They make us very welcome. We have 8 schools per day, and each school brings along about 30 students that are interested in the STEM subject in particular, and then we do it for about 10 or so days. So we put around about 2,500 years 9 and 10 youngsters through the program. And since we've been doing it for 20 years, can you do 2,500 by 20? That's how many kids have been through it. And quite a few of them come back as volunteers, and they can't, quite a lot of them say specifically, well, they never would have thought about doing engineering and science and maths degrees without having attended the challenge. The Adelaide Rotary Club has worked quite hard at encouraging youngsters to come into Rotary. There is a Rotaract Club of the Adelaide University and another one out at Thabberton, and there are no doubt others around the place, and there needs to be more. So that's very important. Another thing is RYLA, it's Rotary Youth Leadership Awards, and the youngsters come along. You know, they can be anywhere from about 17 to 25 or 26 or something like that, and they can get up in front of people and talk about their lives and hear a little bit about Rotary and all that sort of stuff. And my daughter went, and she always thinks that it was one of the better things that she did in getting a bit of a focus on what the world was all about and what sort of careers might suit her better than what she was doing at that time. Even when I joined, it was more or less seen as, I won't say a gentleman's club, but it was certainly a gentleman's club or a men's club, because there were no women in Rotary at all, and they never thought there ever would be when I joined over in Doncaster. But in the 80s, I think the Americans decided that, hey, we can't go on like this. I was at Unley at the time, and I had a bit to do with bringing, sort of mentioning at our annual general meetings, do you think it's time we thought about admitting ladies into our club? And they would say things like, we'll put it to the vote. And we usually get about a 40% for and a 60% against. And I did the next year, and 48, 52. And then finally, and very soon after, we did admit ladies to our club. But you know, in some clubs, they didn't they were very, very upset about it, and I can think of a couple that lost members as a result of it. Another big thing was, and it was difficult, if you missed 3 meetings in a row, you're out. And that was pretty rigidly, observed, that rule. And that meant what you could do, your option was, of course, to do make-ups, as they were called. And if you were a member of, say, the Unley Rotary Club, it wasn't too bad. There was lots of other Rotary clubs in metropolitan Adelaide, and of course, if you're in Adelaide, it wasn't so hard to do a make-up somewhere else. But if you were a member of the Port Lincoln Rotary Club, well, that wouldn't have been quite so easy. And but in its favour, I had to do a lot of international travel in my earlier days, and I can remember clearly going to a Rotary meeting with the New Orleans Rotary Club. It was good because you had an emphasis to look up and see which Rotary clubs there were in whichever city you went to, and if you weren't going to be back within 3 weeks, well, go to one of them. And I went to one in San Francisco one time. I went to one in Bristol over in England one time, and they're always very rewarding, and I was very, very pleased I did. It's just another example of the breadth of Rotary and how worldwide it is spread, and they're all the people with the same ideas, people who are putting other people before themselves and raising $1 to help people who need it more than they do. And the Rotary Club of Shanghai had actually been shut down by previous rulers in about 1947, but goodness gracious me, they were going to restart it, and it would be the first one to restart in China. And I was fortunate enough to be asked to go over as a consultant, and I went there every couple of years, so I knew a bit about Shanghai, I knew a bit about Rotary, and the bloke that had a lot to do with starting the Rotary Club over there was an expat, and they were particularly keen to have Adelaide Rotary support them. And of course, because I have the good fortune to play in quite a few jazz bands, and one in particular called the Adelaide City Jazzmen, put together a few plans to take the Adelaide City Jazzmen over to Shanghai. Well, what an experience. It was fantastic. And the clubs were from all around the world, and the president of Rotary International, he was there, and so were just like Rotary presidents from clubs from all around the world. And I think in this inaugural night, they had something of the order of 800 or 900 people there, and everybody had an absolute ball. And also the Rotary Club, these days, in latter years, they've put in marshals and things at the pageant, the Christmas pageant, and that's particularly interesting to us because Mike and Alex Feckner and Graham, we've all played in the jazz band that gets around in the pageant for many, many years, and so it's not exactly a thing run by Rotary, but I bet you Rotary's put in a lot of money into it over the years, and of course now with putting in volunteers to help to sort of control it on the day, they're making quite a big contribution now. We were very lucky in being able to mix music with Rotary. I think in our case we've played at lots of changeover shows, and we've played at lots of other sorts of, like bumping into the governor, and he's quite a good friend of ours, and he being able to mix it in with Rotary's been just fantastic, special for me. But the gigs that you do all over the place and the people you meet, it's just really remarkable, and it's sort of like Rotary in a way, you meet people as a result of it, and it adds to your life, I think.